Good afternoon, Kazakhstan. Good morning, UK, and all our participants from all over the world. I'm very pleased to welcome you to session 6 of the 3rd Central Asian Research Forum on Sustainable Development and Innovation. And today's session will cover a broad number of sustainable development goals, such as goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal number 12, responsible consumption and production. And finally, but not the least, goal number 13, climate action. My name is Alfiya Wright, and I will be moderating your session today. And I'm connecting from Glasgow in Scotland. Today we have 7 panelists. 2 of them will be opening our session with an overview of the current situation in Kazakhstan, and then will be followed by 5 projects presented by our 6 panelists. So Q&A session will be held at the end of the session. So I'm inviting you to participate, ask your question in the chat box if you are with us in Zoom, and under the comments, under our live streaming on Facebook. So let me introduce you our first panelist, Arman Kashkinbekov. He will open our program, and he is the head of Sustainable Development Unit at the United Nations Development Program. Our next speaker will be Gulzhan Nalibayeva. Gulzhan, she is a director of Market Development Department at joint stock company Samruk-Energy. Gulzhan has a vast experience in the technological development of power transmission division and market development. So she will be sharing her expertise and provide us with a business view of Kazakhstan's power sector. The third speaker will start our project presentations. His name is John McKinley, and he's an expert in environmental, social, and governance. He has launched and led a variety of companies, from startups to becoming publicly listed entities. John will talk about the application of carbon credits and carbon capture utilization and storage technologies in agriculture. Our fourth speaker is Kuat Bolatov. He is currently a MSc student in environmental studies at Wageningen University in Netherlands. Kuat will talk about energy efficiency. Our next 2 speakers will co-jointly present their project about challenges of Almaty region in the transition to renewable energy transmission. Madina Junussova is a research fellow at the Institute of Public Policy and Administration of the University of Central Asia. She holds PhD in public policy obtained from the Carleton University in Canada. She also holds a candidate degree in urban planning from Kazakh National Technical University. Nazım Timirgaliyeva is a scholarship holder, and she studies energy and environmental management at Europa University in Flensburg, Germany. Nazım has a bachelor and master's in power engineering from Tomsk Polytechnic University, Russia. The session will be finished by our Asel Nugmanova, a civil engineer and graduate of Queen Mary University of London and of the University of Liverpool. She also holds a MSc in engineering in management from Nazarbayev University. Asel will bring our attention to the traffic problem in Almaty and discuss solutions on how we can overcome this. Finally, please remember to submit your questions to our panelists in the chat or Q&A box in Zoom or in the comments under the live streaming on our Facebook page. And now I would like to invite Arman Kashkinbekov to start our session today. Thank you, Arman. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for inviting to the online conference. So please enjoy my presentation about what United Nations Development Program does in Kazakhstan, as well as for our views on sustainable development and renewable energy. Let me share my screen so that you can see presentation. One moment, where is it? So I hope you see it well. This is our updated logo of United Nations Development Program worldwide and in Kazakhstan. And I'll be talking about this as well, because even though we speak about sustainable development, it's difficult not to discuss what we also do on COVID-19 response in the country. So portfolio of the project that I manage, Sustainable Development Unit, UNDP Kazakhstan, consists of around 20 big ones, starting from those listed here. Since our topic is on sustainable development, renewable energy and energy efficiency, you can see appropriate ones here. They are multi-million dollars, already different phases of implementation in Kazakhstan. The most important, of course, is DREI, de-risking renewable energy investments. All projects being realized in close partnerships and co-financing with the government and appropriate ministries. Here we have Ministry of Energy. Second one is for energy efficiency labeling of goods, works and services made in Kazakhstan. That's with Ministry of Industry and Infrastructure Development. Third big one is called NAMA, easy to remember. That's for actions in urban development. Now we work with Nur Sultan, we work with Temirtau and other cities, modernizing some micro districts to make them zero emission, to make them more sustainable and to reduce their carbon footprint. The other projects seem to be less involved in renewable energy and energy efficiency, but they all have components on that, even with the land project, with the water project, biofuel project, ecosystems. Good project that I would say it's an example one. We started cooperation with Bitfury, number 7, which is one of the leading worldwide mining companies for blockchain, AI, big data, all that things. They have constructed big data center in northeast of Kazakhstan, Ekibastuz, for those purposes, and would like to compensate for their carbon footprint. And we're working on a big program jointly with them, meaning that UNDP now expanding from the traditional government partnership to private sector, which I think is very important in Kazakhstan as well. And we are planning to expand this cooperation with all big polluters of Kazakhstan to help them reduce their carbon footprint and to make their activities sustainable. Here it's a continuation of the projects that we have, and they say for themselves. Several of them were mentioned. A big one we started as of last week, eco education of all school kids and students in Kazakhstan. We signed multi-billion contract with Ministry of Education and Science. We contributing, ministry is co-financing. The project is kicking off, 3-year project, very important because as we all know, Kazakhstan is no exception. We still live on the same planet. Sustainable development thinking and mentality starts from our kids. And definitely it's very important project that will have a big impact. Also, we are starting big accelerator project in Kazakhstan, first ever, for green tech and for green technologies and green investments to boost those areas in Kazakhstan. And of course, some other projects indicated here on COVID-19 response. Briefly, we're already starting 2 projects. One of those is macroeconomic assessment of the effect of that disease on Kazakhstan, on most vulnerable people in Kazakhstan, youth, unemployed, low income, pensioners, so that to know how it affects them and what government needs to do in order to compensate for that. The second one is about to start next week, is on medical waste treatment project. Unfortunately, in Kazakhstan, the number exceeded of those infected 1,200, and 300 out of them are doctors and medical and nurses. That's incredible, unfortunately, in a bad sense. And we're planning to, as soon as possible, to start procuring so-called autoclaves for proper treatment of used masks, gloves, needles, all other medical equipment which is being used in hospitals. And we definitely hope, with support of the government, Foundation Bergemas, Cousteau Group, other businesses, ADB, Asian Development Bank. We're all uniting for that, so that we can contribute to the problem resolution. For renewable energy, since before joining UNDP, I was for 5 years CEO of Kazakhstan Renewable Energy Association. Definitely, I was deeply involved in the latest development, and as we can see from the maps to the left, our solar and wind potential is still pretty much unexplored. It's measured in terawatt hours, and we're only reaching hopefully 3% of those by the end of this year, 3% of renewable energy, as it's indicated in the concept of moving Kazakhstan to green economy, which our first president, Nazarbayev, approved 7 years ago. So hopefully achieving this first important milestone and then thinking out how to achieve even more. On the right part of the screen, you can see how the history developed in Kazakhstan. It's not as, it doesn't have such a long history, but I think we did our job well. Ministry of Energy, NGOs, developers, investors, international financial organizations, national companies which took the risk and constructed first pilot projects in wind and solar. All many thanks come to all these guys and counterparts for making this happening. The other key milestones indicated in the right bottom of the slide, where we're going to go into years 2030 and 2050. So these numbers are quite ambitious, but I think we'll be making it, achieving those targets. What's happening in Kazakhstan? Of course, Kazakhstan is also now a big part of international renewable energy market. And for example, you can see here 2 photos, just like 2 years from each other. Second phase expansion of Burная Solar, which costed turnkey, the appropriate number indicated here, as well as Kapchagai station, which was constructed by the member of AREC, Bulatabila, with his Chinese partners, Universal Energy. Turnkey cost dropped down almost 3 times. And that's in Kazakhstan, that's already happening. And since Kazakhstan is still oil and gas, coal, uranium big producer, uranium #1 in oil and gas, top 20, in coal also same figure. Of course, the prognosis which comes from International Energy Agency shown here to the left is also very important. By the year 2040, all those capexes in these areas will increase in traditional hydrocarbon area, while for renewable energy they will decrease. And as I said, we're already seeing that in Kazakhstan happening, which gives us more energy and more assurance that all that we do is very relevant and very required, important for our country. Overall overview of traditional electricity generation in Kazakhstan is shown in this slide. I would have to say that electricity price in Kazakhstan is still one of the cheapest in the world. So renewable energy starting 10 years ago and achieving 3% have made a big journey, unique one, I would say. It's not Europe, it's not Germany, it's not 30 euro cents per kilowatt hour for consumed for households, it's only less than $2 cents. So of course we have to compete to these incredible low prices, but as I said, it's already happening. On the other hand, unfortunately, 80% of our electricity generation comes from coal-fired station. They were built 40, 50 years ago during Soviet times. Kazakhstan inherited them for free. So they are phasing out. 45% of them, as per information from our partners, Kazakhstan Energy Association, already exhausted. They need to be shut down, they need to be modernized or refurbished or new stations. That's not happening due to social impact, possible social impact of increase in tariffs for end consumers, and that's delayed problem, which definitely needs to be taken care of by the government as soon as possible. What's the way forward? The way forward is still the same. Generally speaking, it was pre-agreed with electricity committee of the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs at McKinley, that we have to address the government and start developing joint national development program for electricity long run to make Kazakhstan energy supply sustainable, take into account the issues which I mentioned before in my presentation, growing role of renewable, phasing out all coal-fired stations, so that everyone understands what his or her share will be, what needs to be done, what government can provide, what incentives, so that the picture is clear to investors as well. And of course, the financing issue was one of the biggest one several years ago, but as you can see here, it's improved. It's widely available, so it's not issue anymore in finding good source of funding, but the issue is finding a good way of good projects. And as of 2 years from now, we switched from feed-in tariff to auction system, which showed it's all transparency and attractiveness for investors, lowering the tariffs and also providing more transparency to all investors. But of course, there is always room for further improvement. So we need still to modernize auction system. We need to talk more to oil and gas, IT, mining, metallurgical companies on collaboration. And I'm happy to say it's already happening. 3 years ago, they were not understanding us completely. But now they're all on our side, and many of those companies already developing their renewable energy sustainable projects in Kazakhstan. Some of them mentioned here in description. So thank you very much. This is my brief presentation. My email is indicated here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Arman, for your brilliant overview of the projects which are going in Kazakhstan. They are amazing, and we can see that we are going forward. We are going at least in the right direction. As they say, a big journey starts with a small step, and Kazakhstan, I believe, is already doing these steps. So I just wanted to remind, I can see that our chat is being very live, very active. Thank you all participants for taking part. Just a small kind reminder, please choose option to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your messages and comments in the chat, not only panelists. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Gulzhan Nalibayeva, a director of market development department at joint stock company Samruk-Energy, and she will give us an overview of Kazakhstan's power energy market. Gulzhan, please welcome now.
Thank you very much for inviting to this forum, to the energy and efficiency session. And now I'm starting to demonstrate my presentation to you. Just 1 second. So in recent years, the problem of reducing the dependence of national economies on fluctuations in energy prices on the world market has been the focus of attention of all politicians in the world. High volatility of exchange prices for oil and gas puts exporting countries in vulnerable position, as for example happened with the economy of Kazakhstan, whose energy complex is going through very difficult times right now. The energy security of Kazakhstan, like any country, is based on the same principles, among which the main ones are the diversification of energy flows, the pursuit of a positive trade balance, the availability of own reserves, long-term planning of production and consumption of resources, and ensuring physical security infrastructure.
Gulzhan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to double check if your presentation is moving because we are still on the first page. Ah, okay. Cool.
Yes, I'm starting, sorry. According to the opinions of domestic experts, Kazakhstan has sufficient potential to meet the above requirements. However, to ensure integrated energy security in the long time period, the country needs to modernize its mining and producing capacities. In addition, international experts emphasize that modernization of the energy sector is not the only problem standing in the way of efficient use of Kazakhstan resources. So, in the National Energy Report 2017, experts of British consulting company IHS Markit concluded that in addition to updating the infrastructure, Kazakhstan also needs to develop personnel, attract investments, and modernize taxation, and also work out the legislative framework. According to the earlier mentioned National Energy Report, Kazakhstan is one of the richest countries in the world. For example, British Petroleum puts Kazakhstan on the 12th place on the world in oil reserves and the 8th place in coal reserves. Coal has been and remains the most important source of energy for Kazakhstan for over the century. Explored coal reserves in Kazakhstan amount to almost 34 billion tons, or 4% of the world's reserves. According to this indicator, the Republic is among the 10 leading countries in the Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's mining companies in 2019, with a plan of 107 million tons, produced 111 million tons of coal. According to the Ministry of Industry and Infrastructure Development, this, according to the agency's latest data, in 2019, coal exports to Russia decreased by 4% to 21 million tons, and to non-CIS countries, it's Europe and other countries, by 23% to 4 million tons comparing to 2018. This shows that the countries from the Europe and other countries, they are all going to decrease their coal consumption. That shows that other resources are more consumed. More than 80% of the total coal export from Kazakhstan is imported by Russia, which uses it mainly at 7 power plants in the Ural region of Russia. This situation developed geographically and historically, of course, since power plants built in the Soviet time were designed to use the resources of Ekibastuz Basin, even when the countries were in a single territorial space. At the same time, in line with the global aspiration for comprehensive and sustainable growth, Kazakhstan has adopted national and regulated development programs and strategies to create for sustainable development. Kazakhstan was the first state in Central Asia to create the legal framework for the transition to green economy through the adoption of a number of legislative documents, including Environmental Code in 2007, the Law on Support for the Renewable Energy Sources in 2009, and the Transition Concept to the Green Economy in 2013. The authorities have established effective relationships with numerous international financial institutions and strategic partners in the promotion and development of renewable energy, clean technology, and infrastructure. Moreover, Kazakhstan promotes international cooperation for sustainable development through the Green Bridge Partnership Program. The most important requirements that society places in energy today are reflected in the Kazakhstan 2050 strategy in the form of the following challenges. First is global energy security, then exhaustibility of natural resources, and the third, industrial revolution. Projecting global trends on aspects of the long-term development of the domestic fuel and energy complex, it is worth noting that these challenges became an additional incentive for scientific, technical, and social progress. Therefore, now for the electric power industry of Kazakhstan, the most important task is assessment of all development paths, including the innovative component and the formation of a low-carbon economy. The choice of the direction in which renewable energy
Dear
sources...
Gulzhan, here we have a comment from attendee. They're asking to speak you a little bit louder.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I think it's just because you're using your headphones, that's why.
Okay.
Unless you keep the microphone close to yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
The choice of the direction in which renewable energy sources are used along with traditional ones seems to be the most pragmatic and rational form of the country's future fuel and energy complex. The specific problems of the energy sector of Kazakhstan are similar to those faced by most countries. They are caused by the need for affordable, sustainable, and reliable energy system to support national, regional, and global economic growth. The concept of the development of the energy sector should take into account the trends of global energy market, including changes in the structure of demand, development of renewable energy sources, digitalization of power industry, and so on. This slide shows key indicators of electricity production and consumption in Kazakhstan, a unified energy system, by the types of power plants, territorial division of energy system into 3 zones, as you can see, west, south, and north, overflow balance between bordering countries and energy system. So we can see here that overflow balance on the south, on the north are positive. So we don't have deficit here. We are more exporting electricity to bordering countries. And on the west, we have some small overflow balance, which is minus, and we are getting this electricity from Russia. This is also caused by the small transition lines between Kazakhstan and between west and the north energy zones. As you can see on this slide, approximately 70%, this is the chart from on the left side, approximately 70% of all electricity produced in Kazakhstan energy system is produced by coal-fired power plants. The second place is for gas-fired power plants with around 20% share, most of which are located in the west. Then we have hydropower plants with almost 10%, including small hydros, which are basically renewable energy sources according to our current policy. And finally, we have wind and solar power plants with more than 1%. Therefore, renewable energy sources share in 2019 in total electricity generation was 2.3%. This is the information from the Ministry of Energy. In 2019, electricity consumption reached its maximum value for the entire period of independence of Kazakhstan. You can see it on the right upper chart. And as we all know, the power system of Kazakhstan derived from the USSR is characterized by high deterioration of the infrastructure. Now there is a need to modernize equipment and build new generation facilities. According to the system operator, as of January 1st, 2020, the total installed capacity of thermal power plants in Kazakhstan amounted to around 90.4 gigawatts. More than 50% of this equipment is over 30-year-old, and around 69% of the installed capacity of hydropower plants is over 30-year-old. This is shown in the chart on the right and below on the downside. Due to the depreciation of power plants in Kazakhstan, significant construction of new capacities will be required to meet the growing electricity demand. Samruk-Energy will contribute to the stable development of the power industry and the construction of an efficient economy in order to implement the Kazakhstan's 2050 strategy, a new political course for the established state. In this regard, the issues of developing an effective energy transfer strategy, the use of more efficient, environmentally friendly technologies, is a systemic task of development, taking into account a significant share of coal-fired thermal power plants in the total volume of electricity and heat production. The company pays great attention to improving and modernizing obsolete electrical equipment and increasing the efficiency of power plant cleaning elements. If we say shortly about Samruk-Energy, this company holds a leading position in the Kazakhstan electric power market. Over the past years, the share of generation amounted to about 29% of total output in the Republic. Installed capacity reached 28%. The company is a recognized leader in coal production according to current data. An indicator for coal production amounted to more than 40%. And it was also possible to achieve an increase in the share of generation of renewable energy sources up to 20%. Our holding includes the largest energy and coal enterprises, including Ekibastuz Gres 1, Ekibastuz Gres 2 power plants, Bogatyr Kumir open pit basin, Almaty power plants, Moynak hydropower plant, Shardara hydropower plant, first wind farm in Yeremental, Samruk-Energy in Almaty, transmission lines in Almaty and Almaty region, Almataujar companies, and utility company Almaty Enerkazbek. And these yellow circles are the investment projects which are now on their way. Since 2019, the company has established a stable export of electricity to the Republic of Uzbekistan. Here are some key indicators of our company, such as installed capacity, electricity generation, electricity export, production of renewable energy, renewable electricity, and coal production and export. So the main commissioning capacities fall to Samruk-Energy's share. For example, during the period of, let's say, cap tariff in 2009 and 2019, the company increased the available capacity of power plants by 2,000 megawatt, which is approximately 33% of all commissioning capacity, which is equal to the construction of new national significant power plant. According to the company's strategy, Samruk-Energy draws attention to the possibility of using clean coal technologies, the construction of modern thermal power plants, the development of renewable energies, and the reduction of losses in distribution networks. As part of the introduction of technological innovation, Samruk-Energy is continuously working on the following projects, which is modernization of and expansion of capacities in Ekibastuz Gres 1, expansion of Ekibastuz Gres 2, modernization of electric power network in AJK in Almaty, construction of the Kerbulak hydropower plant, and also cyclic continuous technology of coal mining at Bogatyr Kumir open pit mine. And here we have to say that the construction of Kerbulak hydropower plant is very important, which will serve as a source of highly maneuverable generation to cover the peak load deficit. Currently, we are working to improve electricity legislation in this way. At the present time, Bogatyr Kumir has started implementation of the project cyclic flow technology for coal production. The completion of this project is planned for 2022. The need for this fundamental change in technology of coal mining at the Bogatyr mine is related to reaching the depths of mining and at which the existing railway coal transportation scheme is inefficient and the main mining equipment is overaged and need to be renewed. This project provides for the introduction of a new technology for coal mining, which is called auto conveyor, which will increase the production capacity of Bogatyr Kumir and improve product quality, ensure better weight accuracy when loading the coal into railway cars, and reduce the turnaround time of train cars during the coal loading by 3 times. The implementation of this project will enhance the design capacity, and Bogatyr Kumir will succeed in reaching 50 million tons of coal production per 1 year. This will provide current and future coal needs of the power plant of the Republic of Kazakhstan and also Russian Federation. So for now, this is all. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Gulzhan. Thank you, Gulzhan, for your overview of Kazakhstan electricity generation market and Samruk-Energy projects. Your presentation provoked many questions, as you can see on our chat, and familiarize yourself with them to answer them later. So it's again a reminder to our participants. Please choose option to all panelists and attendees so everyone could see your questions and your contribution to the chat. And our next speaker will start a series of presentation on projects related to sustainable development and innovation. So I'm welcoming John McKinley, and he will talk about the application of carbon credits and carbon capture, utilization and storage technology in agriculture. Please welcome John.
Hello, everybody, and I'll put across my share screen in just a moment. But first, just to say thank you very much to the forum for being able to present today. And it covers so much of my interests in what I call sustainable environment and the SDGs, but putting that into practice. And it also hinges on, to an extent, healthcare and well-being for communities. And that's something I've been involved with for now many years. And I have a huge interest both in diagnostics and genomics, both overseas and in the UK. And I'm very sorry to hear of the pandemic and the effect it's having on everybody. And I just hope we all keep very safe in the coming months. Anyway, I'm going to get onto my share screen now. And obviously we'll be then looking at questions and answers later on in the session. So I hope that everybody can both see and hear me. And so I'm going to start on the delivering of global carbon reduction, an effective solution using natural resources that we all know. There is a major problem in the globe today in terms of securing enough impact investment to be invested in our mainstream economies, in our land, in its sustainability, and generally across what are considered green sectors. So we at the global company that we've established from both Australia and in the UK have addressed what we see as the major issue, which is incentivization and change in practices to be able to bring sustainability into the mainstream. So we've looked at impact investment markets, had discussions across the City of London and elsewhere. We've looked at the different practices that are being implemented across the globe and how we can get the commitment of the stakeholders who hold the natural resources. So we've seen here very much an answer. We see soil carbon sequestration as probably the most effective currency to deliver climate change and sustainable development goals. But
John, I'm sorry for interrupting. Are you sharing, have you started sharing screen with us, or you are planning to do it a bit later?
I did actually start sharing the screen. I will ensure that that is now, I'm sorry, I understood that that was already sharing. I do apologize. Is that now on everybody's screens?
Yes, it's starting. Yes, now we have it.
I do apologize. I will very quickly go back to
Full screen mode?
Full screen mode. I'm on now. Is that's fine, I hope.
Perfect.
All right, Alfiya. My apologies to everybody. Technical glitch. So let's go very quickly, as I mentioned to you, about the solution to global problems, and the first part of this, and you will all have a copy of the presentation. So let me go very quickly into where I just got to in terms of the soil and carbon sequestration, in that we regard soil as probably the easiest and the most effective means of securing reduction in carbon emissions. And in fact, in retaining the soil carbons and building an industry from that, which is already based around one huge natural resource that is around us, at the same time as being able to provide financial returns to all stakeholders. And that ranges from both governments to local communities, to the farmers who are working the land, and to the future generations to come. Let me just go very quickly into what I call the global SDG problems that we have. Carbon reduction is not being achieved at the levels that we want it to become, and it's very unlikely that we'll be able to achieve the 2030 mission from the UN. There is little incentivization for investment in sustainable enterprises. And I think the approach that there has been over the generations has been one of capturing profit, trying to get investment returns that are unsustainable from the particular assets, but at the same time not looking at the community benefits and sustainability. And I think that has to change. It has to change from a government level, has to change from the community level, the stakeholder level, of which we are all members. There are no green sector standards currently, which are standard across the industries that are in the sustainable world. There is very little financial evaluation and accountability, and I think the lack of governance and these standards all work against investment being made by, firstly, the financial communities, and then secondly, by those who manage our natural resources. And I think we have to marry those two to come to an effective solution in terms of the carbon problems that we have. The atmospheric carbon levels are at an all-time high, and the rate of increase is still accelerating. And I'd say now we have a further major problem. And that is one that is affecting us all, and that's the global pandemic. It's destroying national economies, and we will feel this across both our economies and our finances and our personal security for generations to come. So we have to do something about that. There are one or two highlights, which are unfortunate byproducts of this, in that the shutdowns have delivered a temporary light relief in terms of our cities, where there is cleaner air. We have seen a reduction now in those emissions, but actually what will happen in the near future is a rapid expansion of industry to try and catch up for the GDP of the countries. And that is going to be an exceedingly difficult time to marry both the expansion of the economies and the SDG goals with carbon reduction. With the exposure to cleaner air, I'd say that there is also a highlighting of how we and our children want to live in the future. And I think that will become a major pressure. So we have to provide a solution here to help with that carbon reduction. I think that businesses are recognizing their community obligations, and so is industry. And there's going to be a year-on-year demand for further carbon credits as the industry develops and as our expansion of industry has to continue. So I think we have to engage now with the global community to deliver carbon reduction and affect the UN SDGs. How are we going to do that? And we have to do it in a number of ways. And we, as I said, have concentrated upon land as being the major resource, and land and agriculture. And I will include in that forestation. It is a secondary area, but it is in no means comparable to the benefit that we can achieve with using our land banks. We need to commoditize the trillions of tons of carbon in the atmosphere by more efficient carbon capture. We need to engage with the landowners, the land investment entities, collectives, the local governments in soil carbon sequestration. And we need to deliver fast and scalable new carbon credits, which can be utilized in the system to compensate the industry expansion. The incentivization is a major issue, and up till now there has been very little incentivization for landowners, community landowners, and for others to become involved. And I think that that is changing, and certainly our model is one of incentivization by sharing and reinvestment in carbon saving both technologies and in projects. And our team actually is across the world in these projects and with these ambitions in mind. We aggregate 3 layers of proprietary technologies with quite a unique go-to-market strategy where we can utilize what are currently, I believe, underpriced commodity carbon, and where we are on the threshold of a major global demand. With the reinvestment that we intend to make in the carbon creating compliant projects, they will generate both in-house carbon credits and, of course, tradable instruments for the purposes of the financial community and the investors. We will create an investment proposition and a return on investment which makes it attractive for our capital markets to become principal players in green energy, the environment, and sustainability. The technologies that we use are to capture and sequester the atmospheric CO2 as the carbon in soils using equipment that we've identified and that we've licensed. The secondary area where there has been very little consideration and where there is an absolute essential need is in measuring and certifying the increase in soil carbon, accessing certified bodies and technologies. We have to be able to prove a validated certification process for the land and for the carbon that is being sequestered in that soil. The carbon credits must be therefore traded on recognized carbon credit exchanges, and there will be new exchanges being developed. I know 2 governments that are looking at that, and possibly that's one where Kazakhstan could become a central player in the future. If we build the land asset bank, we increase the supply of carbon credits, which will be necessary to service industry, businesses, and I believe a number of private investors who want to get involved in sharing in this sustainable activity. We want to share the proceeds with the projects, with the stakeholders, with the landowners, whether they be community and small, or whether they be major industry investors in agriculture. We want to invest in the SDG projects, extending the asset bank and increasing our carbon credits. We want to organize the carbon markets where we can actually get an attractive proposition for investors. Creating a future digital carbon credit exchange system is something that we will look at. However, that has to be based on transparency and governance and may well be a blockchain activity in the future as is used for supply chains. We believe that our multi-layered solution will deliver the mission that we have in delivering the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We can see that by doing so, it'll be a reduction in atmospheric CO2, massively scaled. We'll increase farm yields. Why? Because we're using natural agricultural practices. So we not only increase yield, we increase the ability of food locally and nationally to be able to service an increasing global demand for food. We reduce the reliance on fossil fuels and chemical inputs into the agricultural system. That is great for a further reduction in loans for small stakeholders who currently have an appalling situation of having to pay for fertilizers with a diminishing land yield. We improve water utilization and conservation, and we massively increase farm income and economic empowerment for the rural communities, something where we're transforming agriculture from being a reducing and not a necessarily profitable activity, particularly in small communities, to become one which is a major commercial activity and a profitable one for both landowners, small land occupiers, and also industries such as the financial world. We want it to attract long-term investment, and that is something that we can do by transforming the manner in which we've approached it. So why soil carbon? Well, farming is the second biggest emitter of greenhouse gases on the planet. It's not just the animals that are the problem, it's the way in which the agriculture is practiced. Huge amounts of carbon enter the atmosphere every year because of the ploughing of the land. We want to retain that carbon in the land by the use of sustainable agricultural processes. A number of those are activities that do occur in the world around us today, but they can become one where we actually provide the education and training to be able to do so. So nature's natural soil carbon, I won't go through this, but it is an explanation of quite how it all evolves into that. But I think the most important part for me is returning soil carbon to natural levels. And here we've got no deep ploughing. That is something on the right-hand side that you'll see there. No-till seed drill technology keeps the soil and soil organisms protected and retains and increases carbon dioxide. Carbon's returned to the soil from the atmosphere, soils become more fertile, we have a higher yield and an increasing yield over the years. We've got healthy crops, reduce the fertilizer, fossil fuel usage, retaining water and increasing yield. We translate land into a valuable commodity. So what's our business process? Acquiring the rights to sequester carbon on agricultural land, we've started that process. An effective and transparent and a trustworthy measurement of baseline soil carbon using scanning technology. We deliver regenerative agriculture education, technology and training for local farmers and for major rural operators. With the validation and certification of that system, we can deliver certified carbon credits to both trading exchanges, which are a number around the world, and to those new ones that are occurring. So we believe that the use of innovative technology, of a transformative business model, incentivization can deliver a quantum leap in measuring soil carbon, but also driving awareness of new sustainable agricultural methods by training and showing that it can be profitable, providing immediate monetary incentivization of farmers, investors, back into agriculture and into the communities that they serve. The carbon credits have been going up and down in price, as you've seen internationally, but actually they're sustaining at around about the $15 to $20 market. There is where there has been overcapacity, there are now mechanisms in place to protect that. So now we are looking at a system where there will be an increasing demand and we can supply that demand with those carbon credits, reinvesting in the communities in which we're working. So finally, I just give deference to the team that we've got, and these are just some of those. They are based around the world, with Dr. Brahmadindo in India at the moment on his projects in the north of India, Hamish and Ian both in Australia with Sarah, Ash and myself in the UK, and Bremdy comes backwards and forwards. I also practice in India quite a lot as well. So we have an international group who are now working for this process. So I just leave you with our final slide, which here is looking at the solution to the global problem. We see land being a whole basis for that and reinvestment in our communities. So I'm very willing and able to take questions later on. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to more of you again in this area.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your presentation. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Kuat Bolatov, who will talk about energy efficiency project. Kuat?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're very welcome, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, goedemiddag, dames en heren, which means good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen in Dutch. I'm Kuat, a master level student at the Wageningen University, the Netherlands. First, I want to thank Alfiya Simbayeva for the invitation to this forum to speak and for her trust, and also my friend Arman Kashkinbekov for his support. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I'm gonna share my presentation with you. Wait, this one. Yeah. During my studies, I conducted 2 researches, one of which was in Portugal, and the second about Kazakhstan. The focus of my speech is the role of the state in energy efficiency policy through ecological modernization lens. This slide shows an overview of my presentation. As you can see, it's super standard way of presenting research results. As I said before, it begins with an introduction, then provides the theory used, methodology, findings, and conclusion recommendations at the end. I think it would be nice to introduce myself briefly. I have a bit more than 8 years of work experience in energy efficiency and business development. As I said before, for now, I'm completing master's program in the Netherlands in one of the best universities in environmental sciences. However, some of you may know me as a travel blogger, which is my hobby. Yeah, I think it's enough about myself. Let's move on to the research. So why energy efficiency? I would like to show you a quote from Barack Obama, which he wrote on his Twitter in 2014. We are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last generation who can do something about it. Many scientists believe that the results in the fight against climate change can be achieved through careful use of energy resources. Consequently, energy efficiency is recognized as the key strategy for solving 3 problems related to energy: climate change, energy security, and economic development at the lowest cost to society. And why Kazakhstan? Kazakhstan, having one of the largest reserves of mineral and energy resources in the world, has great potential for energy conservation and thus considered as an important player in the fight against climate change. However, the country can be characterized by an unstable model of energy production and consumption. A variety of reasons underlie this phenomenon: legacy of energy intensive post-Soviet infrastructure, abundant supplies of fossil fuels, and climatic conditions all play a role in driving energy use and emissions. As you can see in the graph, last year the country emitted more greenhouse gases than ever. In 2017, the Asian Development Bank made a forecast that, given the current policy, by 2050, the total level emissions of Kazakhstan will increase by 118%, more than double. For sure, the country tries to respond to these challenges. The government sets an ambitious goal to reduce energy intensity of GDP by 50% by 2050 from the level of 2008. The state aims not only to reduce energy intensity, but at the same time wants to develop economically and maintain a stable socio-political situation in the country. Basically, the goal of the energy saving policy is to transfer the economy from the path of energy intensive development to the path of energy saving. What came of it, let's see a little bit later. In my research, I focused on the role of the state in energy efficiency policy. For this, I used the ecological modernization theory. It was born in the early 1980s in Germany. Its authors believed that command and control instrument that the state used didn't bring a satisfactory environmental effect. Such a policy, to a greater extent, struggled with what had already happened rather than taking preventive measures. They claimed that for significant impact on the environment, close cooperation between the state and society is necessary. The popularity of the theory was given by the Dutch Arthur Moll and Herr Spargaren. Arthur is now Director Magnificus of my university, and Herr is the second reader of my research. The thing is that ecological modernization is not only an academic theory, but also a political concept. For example, the policies of countries such as Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, and others are based on ecological modernization. And in ecological modernization as a political concept, the idea of changing role of the state in environmental policy is central. For my research, I conducted an interview with 16 professionals from different groups, 5 interviews with state representatives, 8 interviews with non-state actors, and 3 interviews with the representatives of international organizations. The focus was made on mid and high level managers. The study was supplemented by literature and online sources. In general, to answer the research question, I consider three components, which you can see on this slide. In recent years, certain successes have been achieved in implementing energy saving measures. Policymakers in the area of energy efficiency rely on the experience of the best examples from both Europe and Asia with transformation and the local realities. According to all the interviews who are covered by this research, in case of Kazakhstan's energy efficiency policy, the role of the state is paramount. It assumes the main role of the regulator, and in almost all of its initiatives uses the command and control instrument. Until about 2014, the state was quite close to other actors. Then the changes began, as many of the respondents noted. According to the information collector, there are not many examples in Kazakhstan when non-state actors took task of the nation state in the field of energy. Moreover, even fewer examples where these initiatives have been successful in their implementation. The scope of non-governmental organizations in the field of energy conservation is poorly developed. The involvement of science and politics at even lower level. The lack of specialists in the area is also affects politics as a whole. In general, Kazakhstan is open to work with international organizations and already involved in global and local environmental treaties. According to the Kazakhstani experts, the role of them in the country's energy policy, efficiency policy is high. The pressure and support of the international community accelerates the process of implementing energy efficient initiatives in the country. Joint projects of Kazakhstan and international organizations in the field of energy efficiency are making positive impact on its development. The implementation of pilot projects shows that they can be scaled through to the Republic and are beneficial not only environmentally, but also economically. To be honest, in my research, one of the most important part is discussion, but due to limited time, I will skip it and move on to the conclusion recommendations. An analysis of energy efficiency policy through ecological modernization peer lens shows that the state plays the main role in environmental reforms. It mainly plays the role of regulator and as a political instrument usually uses command and control. Nonetheless, its role has undergone changes from 1991 to 2019, varied from almost closed to partially open. The influence of international institutions on its internal environmental policy is high, while the involvement of domestic actors is poorly developed. Thereby, the potential for policy involvement is high. Based on the detailed analysis of Kazakhstan's energy efficiency policy, the following recommendations are suggested. First of all, the government should be consistent in its policies and increase support for energy efficiency and renewable energy, as reflected in the country's strategic documents. The scattered responsibility for environmental reforms between various state bodies, namely Minister of Energy, Infrastructural Development, and the lack of unified strategy, as well as the gap between the initiatives and their implementation, make it necessary to create a single state body that will be responsible for the country's environmental policy, including energy efficiency. It's necessary to use economic incentives for energy efficiency and increase public awareness in addition to the regulative instrument. Perhaps in the current situation, reality of Kazakhstan, where much depends on the initiative of a particular person, a strong leader is needed here. In addition, it's recommended the development of a non-resource-based economy for the stability of political initiatives, including the field of energy efficiency. With oil production having reached a record level in 2019 and further plans to expand coal and oil production, Kazakhstan is deepening its dependence on fossil fuel. In addition, the development of technology, namely converting electricity from renewables to hydrogen in the next 2-3 decades will lead to the fact that oil will lose its position as the main energy resource. Thus, diversification of economy is recommended. Finally, the development of democratic institutions, the fight against corruption, decentralization, support for market mechanisms, the strengthening of sectors such as NGOs, science, and civil society will also have a positive impact on the development of not only energy efficiency, but also the state as a whole. For example, a competitive business environment that fights for customers, including through its environmental focus, or strong NGOs that can and want improvements in the country. In general, with the development of democratic patterns, civil society becomes more involved and interested in positive political changes. I'm done. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Alfiya?
Thank you, Kuat. Thank you, Kuat, for your presentation. And as you mentioned that, yes, we need a strong leader who will be driving these initiatives forward, especially in a country like Kazakhstan, where approaches comes from the top to the bottom. And now if you stop sharing your screen, please. You need to switch off the screen sharing. Thank you. So now I would like to invite our next two speakers who will be presenting jointly their project on challenges of Almaty region in the transition to renewable energy production, Madina Junussova and Nazim Timurgaliyeva. Please, ladies, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good day to everyone, and thank you very much again for inviting us. I'll just start and give a short introduction, and then I give the floor to my colleague, Nazim. So actually, I would like to say the reason why we decided to do this study, it was because the practitioners and the people working in the field, energy sector, they actually raise certain awareness about fast growing renewable production. And Nazim, she's working in the energy sector as an engineer. She also experienced in her practice that there were some electricity shorts and some accidents on the regional level. And we had several discussions with different decision makers. And we actually planned to be a part of Sustainable Cities project that was initiated together with the Global Environmental Fund and United Nations program in Kazakhstan. But unfortunately, we couldn't get funding, so that this project was done on having a zero budget, but we had a great support from University of Central Asia, where I'm working for. And luckily, Nazim actually could get a DAD grant, and now she's studying abroad in Germany. And we hope that she will continue our study, and it will be part of her master's thesis. I just briefly say that she's not going to cover the approach we took, because it was a comprehensive approach. We started from intensive literature review. We reviewed legislation, national companies' reports, and also strategic documents related to renewable energy integration in Kazakhstan. And then we had some informal interview with key stakeholders. We covered about 30 people, including civil servants and representative of traditional power plants and the sustainable energy like solar power plants. That was the result of this comprehensive study. And now I'm giving floor to Nazim, but she will present the findings of our study, and I will be part of the discussion. And good luck, Nazim. Please go ahead and start.
Thank you, Madina, for this opportunity. Yeah. Let me, to reduce the noise, I would try to share only my screen. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nazima. I'm a master level student at University in Flensburg. Also, I've been working as an electrical engineer in one of the industrial company in Kazakhstan, particularly in Almaty region. And today's subject is about renewable electricity production and sustainability of the national and regional power system in Kazakhstan. United Nations Conference on Sustainable Energy Rio +20 and the launch of Sustainable Energy for All initiative opened a new stage to the tradition to sustainable energy development for many countries. And hosting Energy for Future Expo in Nur-Sultan and enactment of sustainable energy strategy demonstrates the readiness of Kazakhstan to push country towards sustainable energy. And the idea of transition of Kazakhstan to green economy was one of the first strategic steps towards the development of renewable energy production in the country. The government of Kazakhstan chose renewable energy development as one of the main instruments of country climate policy. And nowadays, a government aims to achieve 6% share of renewable energy in the total electricity production in 2025. However, in fact, in 2019, new solar, wind, and small hydropower plants are accounted for about 2.4% of total installed capacity. However, renewable electricity production cannot fully replace traditional hydrocarbon-based energy generation in foreseeable future due to country economic and technological development challenges. At the same time, the development of renewable electricity generation has a great potential to stimulate the economic development of southern region of Kazakhstan, which often experience energy deficit and are dependent upon imported energy from neighboring countries, including Kyrgyzstan. Due to government policy supporting renewables, the country is experiencing a fast growth of renewable power plants. It was mentioned already with our colleagues already. From 2016 to 2019, total capacity of renewable power plants increased threefold, reaching 935 megawatts, well on track to reach 2025 capacity goals. The capacity of solar power plants increased almost 8 times, reaching 450 megawatts, also well on the way to the 2025 goals. As was mentioned before by Gulzhan, the power system in Kazakhstan consists of 3 zones, and it is worth to know that the South Zone is connected to Central Asia system, and from 2017 to 2018, the power production increased in the north and the west, but decreased in the south by 4.7%. The South Zone currently experiences 11.1 billion kilowatt hours electricity generation deficit. And notably, the largest share of renewable generation, 72.5%, is concentrated in the South Zone. Due to this mentioned reason, we selected Almaty region of the South Zone as our study focus area. And moreover, this zone has a favorable climate condition for the development of renewable energy production. To implement national renewable energy policy, the government of Almaty region has ambitious plans to increase the share of renewable energy inputs from 28% in 2018 to 60% in 2025. Today, the total installed capacity of small hydropower plants reach 126 megawatt, accounting for 62% of the national total capacities nowadays. The total of wind power plants reached 79% of the national total generation. And moreover, solar power plants reached 57% of the national total output. Interesting to note that's good news because some towns and villages of Almaty region was selected and included in Almaty urban agglomeration, and they plan to be as a driver of economic development in the region. But however, the energy deficit in the Almaty predicted to be reduced and may reach more than 500 megawatts. And therefore, the energy deficit affects increases in the electricity cost, which could negatively impact the local investment climate and business environment on the region. Regarding the energy market system, as you can see, the central state role play financial settlement center. The FAC serves as only the mediators, buying clean energy from renewable power plants and then selling it to so-called conditional consumers. In the case of Almaty region, conditional consumers are as traditional conventional power plants, which is coal-fired. And this means they're obliged to buy at least an established amount of electricity generation by all renewables power plant at the high tariff established by government. Nowadays, according to Kazakh estimation, today's electricity purchases from renewable power plants account for 4.5% of total traditional power plant expenditures. But with the growth in renewable sector, they are expected to increase to about 30% by 2021. And in the long run, this extra financial burden from renewables will result in lower profits for traditional plants, likely resulting in reduction in the expenditures on capital investments or investments on maintenance. And the most interesting part is regional challenges while the power producers want to feed in the traditional centralized power system their clean energy. As you can see, traditional energy producers facing increasing energy losses and to integrate unstable amount of extra energy from renewable power plants. Based on my experience, I would like to focus on Stekeli sub-region. It's one of the part of Almaty region, and in the summer season we have 7 small hydro power plants and only 1 conventional thermal power plants. And in the summer season, dispatch priority is given to renewable power plants. So usually, conventional power plant switch off one of the turbines, and because of the excess energy in the system, which whereas can lead to increase in voltage and instability in frequency. As you might maybe know, many of the renewable power plants doesn't have any kind of regulators that could govern frequency or voltage. So increasing, we should take into account that small hydro power plant unable to do balancing, so only the hopes falls to thermal power plants. But it's already what is already weak and lacking capacities and unnecessary equipment after like automatic control to bring system in equilibrium. So one of the main challenges is lack of the capacities, lack of the necessary infrastructure, low transmission capacities, and weak grid connection with other energy regions. Apart from that, I would like to mention about aging infrastructure. And the next point about energy management in Almaty region. As you can see from the slide, the structure of energy management dispatching is vertical hierarchy, and we have centralized and mainly manual management of electricity distribution process, which makes it difficult to sustain stability of the electricity supply. And there are some specific aspects that I want to emphasize as characteristic of energy management control. It's the low level of the automation of energy system management. It means that decision-making process, it highly depends on the human factors and professional competence of the experts responsible. Second, there are day-ahead dispatching. It is not sufficient for adjustment to the generation schedule to the required load profile. And moreover, Kazakhstan currently lacks adequate infrastructure to balance power supply on the regional level. And serious challenges that associated with rapid increase of renewables cannot be solved by simple introduction of smart grid system or by using traditional power plants as regulators. And to sum up, energy policy in Kazakhstan committed to support renewable energy production and might pose a significant risk to sustainable development of the national and regional power system. Under the current system of centralized management and distribution of electricity, renewable energy inputs cannot succeed in facilitating regional economic development. And policymakers should explore opportunity for decentralized of renewable energy production and consumption, which may help to decrease unnecessary cost burdens associated with the integration into our power system. Thank you. And thank you for your attention. Yeah, for further cooperation, we are welcomed, and there are also our contacts. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Nazım. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Madina. And our session will be finished by Aysel Nugmanova. Aysel, hello. She's a civil engineer and a graduate of Liverpool, University of Liverpool, and she will talk about traffic problems in Almaty and discuss possible solutions, how we can overcome it. Aysel, thank you. Please welcome.
Okay, so hello to everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. I would like to express my gratitude to Kazakhstan PhD Association in the United Kingdom for such great work that is done today. And now I'm going to share my presentation. 1 second. Okay, the topic of my presentation today is about effectiveness of ring roads and other large-scale infrastructure projects in reducing traffic congestion. And we will be touching big Almaty ring road case study. And in Kazakhstan and all other Central Asian countries, and even in US, it always happens that traffic congestion problem is seen to be solved by just adding road capacity. The thing is that this is not correct, because there is a known fact that new roads, particularly urban roadway expansion, they produce so-called generated traffic. Oops, sorry, just one.
Dear attendees, I believe Aysel will be with us shortly.
Sorry, please, for this.
It's okay.
So, it's my child, please, sorry for that. So basically, as I said before, traditional traffic engineers, they see the solution to congestion problem in just providing additional road capacity, which is ring road development, parking lot development, flyover roads, intersection improvement, and rail over road grade separation. But here, there is ignored fact that new roads, they produce generated traffic, which is an additional peak period vehicle traffic. So if you have a look at this graph, traffic lanes volume versus time, we may see that traffic volumes increase until roads are congested. However, this growth rate starts to decline as congestion starts to develop. And in case there is added road capacity, for example, new highway, new ring road is being built, then there is a second grows. As we can see, this is kind of a vicious circle that's happening here. And as a result of that, we get this so-called generated traffic, which consists of diverted and induced travels. And it often happens that this generated traffic consumes significant portion on the newly added road capacity. And even this is proved by Gulzhan, who is one of the prominent transport science figures. He says that an average road improvement for which traffic increase due to all other factors predicted correctly will see an additional induced 10% of base traffic in the short run and 20% in the long run. Okay. So let's assume we have a new highway being built near your house, and what changes you're going to have? First of all, of course, there will be reduced congestion delay, increased traffic speeds, and there will be changes in time, road, destination, and mode. And these will lead to land use changes. There will be monostructural land use change with a low population density. There will be more dispersed automobile-oriented development. And of course, this will lead to overall increase in automobile dependency, and there will be resource consumption and the growth of greenhouse gas emissions in the long run. Moreover, there will be reduced public transit service and degraded walking and cycling infrastructure, which is also expressed in Downs-Thomson paradox. All of these consequences are represented on these pictures on the slide. And in order to solve the severe problem of traffic congestion in Almaty, Big Almaty Ring Road project was initiated. The main aim of that is to divert transit traffic from the city and to prevent environmental degradation. And it is also claimed that this Big Almaty Ring Road will lead to a decreasing of traffic jams to the Almaty center and an increasing in the average speeds of motor transport in the city. And this will lead to a decrease in average fuel consumption, which will lead to a general reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, since the growth in the number of vehicles in the future is inevitable, and even a slight decrease in greenhouse gases in general through the implementation of project is a positive impact. So in my opinion, this statement is quite questionable because it seems like a phenomenon of traffic-induced demand that I was talking about earlier is neglected here, because as we know that the new road will generate extra traffic, and it means that there will be rural car-based development stimulated as the growth of average speeds in the transportation system increases, the accessibility of destinations in a wider distance, and this will lead to that there will be fixed activities with longer distances. And of course, as a consequence of that, there will be increase in private car usage, and problem of congestion will not be solved. And of course, in the long run, there will be increasing amount of vehicle emissions. Moreover, in one of the reports by UNDP, it says that if Almaty follows to continue to exist, continues to follow existing transportation policies, most of the investments when most of the investments are done towards development of new road networks and personal car use stimulation, there will be a 75% increase from carbon dioxide emissions by 2023. For now, however, we cannot give any certain opinions on that because the project is still in the construction phase and we need real site-specific traffic assessment to conduct for that. And so what we did in our research is we decided to rely on international experience. We have considered around 30 cases, and these are the cities who were successful in solving traffic congestion problem. Then we developed this classification system, which consists of these three concepts. This is concept 1, concept 2, and concept 3. And as a concept 1, you may see that this is basically a heavy engineering, it's a heavy engineering measures. When we build just a new ring roads, build new bypass roads, then extend the width of the roads. And as a concept 2, these are the cities which decided to decline this heavy engineering construction, but apply travel demand management with push and pull measures. These are area-wide parking management, parking space restrictions, car limited zones, speed reduction, road pricing, and also a priority for buses, attractive public transport facilities, and also attractive pedestrian zones. And as a concept 3, we have found cases where there was a combination, simultaneous operation of heavy engineering measures and push and pull measures in the city. So, and what we did, and for the concept 1, we have found that just adding road capacity as heavy engineering measure is not sufficient, because the evidence were found in Pope reports. These are post-opening project evaluation reports developed by Highways in England. And it was found that on average, there is a traffic increase over the short run, which is around 3 to 7 years, and there will be plus 7% increased traffic. And in the long run, from 8 to 20 years, there will be plus 47% increase in traffic. And here is a summarized table for some randomly selected bypass roads, ring roads, and of course we may see this is there are some increased values. As a concept 2, we decided to choose very successful cities like Hasselt in Belgium and Malmö in Sweden, because Hasselt city, they were planning to build a 3rd ring road around the city, but they rejected that project and decided to make a focus on public transport strategy. Basically, it was free of charge bus service. They also decreased the number of lanes in the city, giving priority to cyclists, pedestrian, and also to bus services. And as a result of that, they were able, after 1 year of such strategy, 16% switch from car to bus, 12% from bicycle to bus, and even 9% former pedestrians, they switched to these bus services. However, in 2014, this free of charge bus service was suspended, but it produced very excellent results that showed that this push and pull measure was working. In Malmö, they was doing their focus on providing brilliant cycling infrastructure. Because, for example, on this picture, you may see in the corner that there is a typical urban road streets in Malmö, and there are biking facilities there provided. And so also there is a 24-meter long biogas hybrid BRT service. And as a result of that, within like 5 years, there was a car traffic decreased by 6% despite population growth. And this graphic shows that car usage was destimulated, and mostly public transport options were more popular among population. And concept 3, when there is a heavy engineering measure and travel demand management with push and pull measures, simultaneous combination of these actions to reduce traffic congestion also produced very good results. For example, in Stockholm, they built S-inch bypass roads and also applied congestion charges on the entrance to the city center. And this decreased by 16% the number of vehicle kilometers driven. And also in Oslo, they built Fessens tunnel and applied congestion charges. And this also was successful in reducing private car ownership by 21.4%. And more examples are provided in our article. And if you need more details, please contact me. So these are the examples, even from Seoul, from Paris, Auckland, Canada, and so on. We also conducted expert interview results to collect opinions of Almaty residents and also those who were involved in this project on what their attitude on that. The first question was that what will be the result of this project in terms of congestion, environmental impact, air quality, and new developments along it. the questions, their responses were that there will be initial relief in traffic congestion due to this big Almaty ring road, but it will be temporary. And the other opinion was that there is a need for additional measures, for example, further construction of metro lines, ideally implying on annually commissioning of 2-3 stations, and switching of all public transport of Almaty to gas. And the other opinion was that this big Almaty ring road will designate new borders for the city of Almaty, which means that city will grow and suburbanized territories will be accumulated within the Almaty boundaries, and previously organized green belts, which are shown on this photo around the city, they will be gradually destroyed in favor of low-rise buildings. And of course, this will lead to dependence on personal car usage. And also the other opinion is that at radial exits, for example, Almaty Bishkek, Almaty Baysirke, Almaty Talgar, and so on, there will be large construction of shopping centers, logistic terminals, and industrial facilities. And of course, this will provide employment possibility. And also the other opinion is that currently a big number of drivers from exurban areas outside Almaty, for example, from Akjarka, Skelen, Kamenka, they are converging towards Almaty city center every morning, and this actually creates the traffic jam on the roads. And the other opinion was that urban sprawl is also induced by 50% discounts on insurance and taxes for residents from nearby exurban areas of Almaty. The other question was that, do you think the charging system on this highway, on this bypass, will attract drivers to use it? One of the answers were that if toll tariffs, congestion charges become unaffordable for drivers, then there is the risk that they may not use the tolled road and try to avoid the stations and use old roads and still keep entering the city. And another opinion was that why not to provide congestion charges on the city center? And so the third question was that, what do you think of the construction of the second BRT corridor through these densely populated streets such as Желтоқсан or Eastern bypass in 2021? And 51% were negative. And for the fourth question, what about, would you like to provide priority for pedestrians on the city streets? 63% were positive for that. And the final question was that, why don't you commute by bike? What the obstacles on that? Some of the answers were, there are harsh climate conditions in winter, and also there is a fragmented, incomplete cycling infrastructure, which is not providing safety. The lack of safety on roads for cycling, and no priority for cyclists, no protecting bollards or barriers for the cycling paths on the road space, and no parking facilities near commercial centers, business centers, and even no shower cabins offered by employers after driving bike. That was an interesting comment. And lack of bike promotion programs, for example, subsidies for purchasing a bicycle, or no rewards per kilometer with a GPS sensor installed in bicycles are offered. So what we do recommend is that Big Almaty Ring Road project is quite an important project. It's a first public-private partnership project for our country, and it will definitely increase the competitiveness, transit competitiveness of Kazakhstan. However, this initiation, this project must be simultaneously accompanied by travel demand management with push and pull measures, because any highway, any new ring road, it will create a nucleus of development. As a result of that, there will be new trips and of course new growing travel distances, and this will lead to growth in car number, and finally there will be non-sustainable development of the urban transport system. As we're talking about the long-term effects, we need to understand that just building any large-scale infrastructure project, it will provide only short-term initial mitigation to the traffic congestion. But in the long run, sustainable urban solutions must be applied. For example, some of them are here, is mixed land use approach to reduce travel distances in Almaty, also applies centralized spatial planning systems that integrates both transport infrastructure and land use development. And also, maybe we need to think about application of congestion charges for driving car in the city center. For example, like European experience show that there are some car-free zones, and they're quite successful in traffic reduction. Also, there must be very attractive public transport alternative, and the number of parking lots in the city center must be reduced, and also there must be reasonable charging for parking. And the most important is that all stakeholders, including Almaty residents, must be involved in the planning process. So, well, this is the end of my presentation. And the last point is that the last message of my presentation is this statement: widening roads to ease congestion is like trying to cure obesity by loosening your belt. So these are my references. And if you have any questions, you may email me at that address. Thank you very much. So, okay.
Thank you very much, Asel, for your presentation. And I love the quote, widening roads to ease congestion is like trying to cure obesity by loosening your belt. Just to the point. So now I'm happy to announce that our panelists are finished with their presentations, and I'm welcoming our participants still to pass on your questions. I have seen that some questions been answered, but I will articulate them here so everyone can hear and know your answers. And given the current situation with COVID-19, my first question will be about how the situation with COVID-19 will impact the current projects and energy sector in Kazakhstan, as well as projects globally on carbon reductions and renewables. Thank you very much. And please welcome to answer. Who wants to start first? Yes, Madina, thank you.
Yeah, one of our research interest is also to study urban and rural divide. And as we experience now, our Minister of Science and Education trying to use different online resources to reach the people. But there are many people who is living in remote areas and they're far away from centralized electricity grids. So if we do not allow or incentivize them to develop sustainable alternative energy and we allow them to use it, they will not be able to use to get electricity, and it means they will never get opportunity to get access to some resources like internet. So that's why actually this is one of the reasons we call for creating institutional conditions for decentralized development of sustainable energy for some remote areas, and it can be combined systems. So maybe after this external factor that we all experienced, our government will change its policy and understand that it's not possible to have a centralized, you always use the centralized power to deliver electricity and internet to the remote areas. So we have to make discount and we have to allow people to get access. And this is one of the issues. We hope it will change, but we don't know. And we see here very bright people from Samruk-Energy and from,
United
different companies. I saw the participants list and I see that some people are listening from the government. So please think about how we can adjust our energy system to reach the distant areas, areas where people experience high electricity costs because of this centralized system. Thank you.
Actually, I would like to mention here, add to your comment, that your suggestion about decentralizing electricity system is being applied in some of the African countries because they have very poor central transmission systems, and that's why they are using the approach of addressing electricity issues locally. at certain distant remote locations. So we might have a look at their experience. Next speaker who wants to answer how COVID-19 might impact or have impacted our energy, electricity sector and future and current ongoing projects towards renewable energy and other projects as well. Yes, John?
Let me add.
Arman, okay.
Of course, COVID-19 is a worldwide disaster, and Kazakhstan is no exception. It's affected us a lot. Of course, it's created market uncertainty on a global market, leading to oil and gas price drop, which we observed recently. And that means that significant proportion of state budget income will be reduced. And the price in our prognosis for macroeconomic plans of the country have to be revisited. Of course, it doesn't bring more enthusiasm to the government. They have to finance their social obligations, industry, support them. The plans are to expand those before COVID happened to our country. But for the organization I'm speaking for, United Nations Development Programme, we were able to maintain all ongoing projects in the country, as well as we were able to initiate and sign contracts with the government on new ones, which I mentioned during my presentation. So that gives us more energy and optimism about the work that we do currently and after COVID. And as I said, we're also working on big macroeconomic assessment study for the whole economy of Kazakhstan, how it will affect. So the results will be known shortly, and we will see the actual prognosis and data on the results. But other than that, for renewable energy, I don't see big impact as of now, because we work and live by auction results, which already happened. So these are 3-year contracts to construct and put into exploitation their facilities. They still have some time. We have to keep in mind that, as I said, the financing and the financing provided by international financial organizations and investors is also becoming cheaper to Kazakhstani borrowers. That helps as well. For renewable energy, I don't see a big impact because of that. For energy market, of course, it doesn't help. If we speak energy, including hydrocarbons, gas, uranium, and other products where Kazakhstan have leading positions. But again, we need to have a big study to understand what will be in particularly. And good for us, for international organizations, even though the government is suffering these losses in terms of budget revenues because of the oil and gas prices, they still want to contribute much to national-wide programs. None of them have been officially reduced so far, even though the amended budget was recently signed by President Tokayev, where all second focus, second priority, third priority projects were not withdrawn or cancelled. They were postponed until end of the year or until next year. So that's, I think, quite normal reaction and quite wise policy of the president, of the government, that will be doing and performing everything. Maybe not as soon as today, but definitely we will do all of that.
Thank you, Arman. John?
Could I just, I think there's going to be a limit to how central government and even regional government is able to respond to the damage of the economies locally and nationally. And I think for certainly, as we've been looking at agriculture, it's up to us as well to look at how we can respond to this with limited resources and change from what has been a poor relation in terms of investment to a bigger one, where it becomes quite an investable proposition. And we've seen that in India. You said about that, Alfiya, in Africa. Certainly in India, that's been the case for some time. And there are NGOs, as one particular bank, where they've taken hundreds of thousands of what were single crop or family crop farmers, and they're developing those into communities, changes in agricultural practice, where we are talking about the carbon emissions and the hopefully support of the Indian government for doing so. that sort of area can lead to one major area, which is access. It's got some money. It means that the local communities can start to grow. It gives access to food, which they haven't had before, covers most of the SDGs for communities, but at the same time, giving them access to the internet, giving them access to the very education and training which they need to build their communities again. So I think just acting from that area, I think the agricultural industry with support, some support, can go a long way to rebuilding a more powerful rural community to work alongside what is going to have to be a national rebuilding program.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for your comment. And it's a very interesting perspectives you give on this question. And I hope that's answered the questions of some of the participants. And my next question will be to all of our panelists. So if you can, please, you're welcome to answer. We could see from several presentations, not from one, that the government is willing to step into renewable energy and willing to develop that area. And my question is, what is the motivation behind that step? And is it related to some energy transition goal? Do we have any goal? Or is it related to some carbon reduction goal? Or is it related to some energy security? So if you could give your overview on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Can I? Just would like to use this chance to invite you for tomorrow's session, which is going to be our findings on the review of Manatown policy. Manatown is a small town which is based on the operation of a single industry. So I think we have to learn from this mistake. We have to understand that natural resources will be over one day. So if you look at this prosperous technically town where on my backside, where our university is going to be built, that was one of the best towns in the Soviet time, and it was rich because they were mining lead and zinc, but one day it was over. And that was not linked, I mean, the collapse of that town was not linked with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Just because the resources were exhausted. So I think our government is clever enough to understand that some resources, they will, disappear one day. Of course, we understand that technologies are developing, and if we extract right now only 20% of the oil we have, we can extract more with new technologies. But we also have to understand that we extract something in one day, and that resource was actually developed under the ground for the years. And this is important, and our government understand. But unfortunately, we have a past dependency. We still cannot get rid of this habit of doing everything on the Soviet style. And we want to control, and we want to do everything on the old way. And the old way, what we do, we artificially support renewable energy development without creating a real incentives to local businesses to join this trend. Look around, who is actually doing this? Mostly foreign companies come, and they have, we had a meeting with a Swiss company, and Nazim, she also was in the meeting. They came, and that was the people from the Chamber of Commerce of Switzerland, and they said, wow, look around, you have a solar energy plant, you have a wind plant, we want to be here in this region. And we were so upset to say that, guys, even you locate here, it doesn't mean you will get this clean energy, because it's actually goes to the centralized grid and it's mixed up, and we don't know what is the percentage of clean energy you will get at the end, and what will be the price. So we feel a little bit ashamed. So I would say that government understand, but we don't have enough qualified experts and qualified people. And that's why we hope that Nazim will go to Germany and learn about hybrid systems and how we can actually adjust our system, not continue past dependence, but adjust and introduce something new. We don't have a clear answer right now. But we see that the government is doing sometimes a lot of copy pastes that are not actually good for our country. So it's good to repeat the experience, but first we have to pilot it, we have to test it, and then spread it to the country. But unfortunately, we do it immediately. We want to have immediate results. And as you see, we're doing well on this in numbers. But if you look at the quality of the implementation in the field, and this is a problem. So I would say that the government will do this anyway. So, I mean, Kazakhstan is clever enough to do this. We are proud, but how it's going to be done? This is a question. And we ask and we invite our government to make evidence-based decision-making, to invest in research, invest in studies, see the results, and then take decisions. Not just copy-paste some practices that were useful in Singapore, US, or any other countries around the world, because the context is different. And this, of course, will not work for Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much, Madina. I totally agree that it's not a copy-paste approach. It needs to be adjusted to the local needs. And actually, the scientific community needs to be involved, and the policies and the results of it should be based on the results of the research, not just because somebody said so. Somebody else?
Sorry, Alfiya, can I add to Madina? The question about the, I think the government should first of all understand that all these decisions, firstly, will get the price increasing. So electricity tariffs should definitely increase in this case. I think that the first focus should be on this, because every day we see from, I don't want to say that our government is bad, but still yet we have these problems that government restrains the tariffs. All the existing power plants are already amortized, depreciated, and so the question is, first of all, in tariffs. If government says that we don't want to increase the tariff, then all these decisions about hybrid, about the renewables, about the nuclear power plants, about all this development will not work. Thank you.
Could I just add a UK perspective? And I thought Madina's and Gulzhan's views were very important and very relevant. We went through a very similar, non-Soviet, I may add, but we had centres of steel and coal throughout the UK, particularly 2 or 3 centres like Sheffield, devastated by the loss of the steel and the industry they had. Corby was a steel industry that dropped completely. We've had that throughout now, different, and they're the fossil fuel industries that we've lost. So we've had to try and rebuild. And I think the important part is having to engage the areas that you mentioned, which were government, because there has to be a government drive on this, but there has to be an industry voice in this, huge, and it's a partnership actually. And you've got to bring in those industry leaders who understand about translation of innovation and technologies. And the UK has been working very hard, and I know actually with Kazakhstan and also with other countries, on saying innovation is great, and it does, and it builds new industries. And you've got to find a way of looking at the future and saying, what are those industries, technologies, which are going to lead the country in the next 20 to 30 years? It's a 50-year plan. And we had a system which I wrote about very, very briefly in the question and answer chat box, which is to do with the catapults. And they have been a government initiative, which is one for different industry sectors throughout the UK, so not based in just one area, where you engage people who have been in industry experience looking at the future for the next 10, 20 years. But they actually get some funding, but then they go out, merge with industry, partner with industry to come up with solutions for translation and testing, and then for adoption throughout the UK. And it's quite a good model. It's working in, I worked on the personalized medicine, that sort of key area. We've got it in healthcare, we've got it in medicines, we've got it in power, energy, different, all key areas of an economy. And I think it's probably worth looking at just that system and adapting it, as you say, to Kazakhstan. What are the key areas and where should those centers be that look at innovation and translation of innovation, so that you build that hub of people from government, from industry and businessmen in those centers. You may not need many, but you need some to look at all the different sectors of your entire national economy. And I think looking at that ahead, it's a very good way of getting people to think about 20 and 30 years and not the financial problems that we have today. Because if you don't invest in new technology and innovation, you never will create the new hubs for industries within the countries.
I have another question related to energy and energy transition. We saw from the slides of our first two speakers that Kazakhstan has major reserves in coal, and it actually produces and uses 3/4 of its production. And is there any plans, future plans for Kazakhstan, or near future plans, hopefully, to switch from coal to gas, or minimize the consumption of coal, and how this transition is planning to be taken place?
I can reply. It's a very interesting question. Simply speaking, there are no plans. It's not possible. It's not so cheap. We're not United Kingdom or United States so far, but we're planning to do so, to enter a club of 30 or 50 nations most developed on earth quite soon. And that, of course, would mean new innovative economy and new sustainable energy sector. And of course, we have to develop our gas resources, not just for export to Gazprom from Karachaganak, but also to supply Kazakhstani cities with it. And that's being done. The Sararka gas pipeline is already here next door in Nur-Sultan. We, by the way, as UNDP now launching big project with Akimat of Nur-Sultan on gasifying particular district. Which is currently burning coal and even tires at winter to provide energy and provide heat for themselves. And if that's successful, using our financial support mechanisms, that will be expanded to the whole city. But the problem is the project exists, the pipe is here, there is an issue of shortage of gas, because in Kazakhstan, being largest oil and gas producer, one of those, the most of gas is being reinjected for reservoir pressure, so that more oil can be delivered on surface. Secondly, the Karachaganak almost all goes to Russia, Gazprom, long-term agreement, no escape. But there are, of course, other gas fields, and definitely based on example of America, of Europe, there have to be a switch, gradual one, from coal to gas, and then to, I don't know, hydrogen, plus growing share of renewable energy. We don't say renewable energy can replace it all tomorrow or day after tomorrow, it's not possible, but we have to think about sustainable energy balance for our future economy, which will be growing, which will be more innovative, and there is a dialogue with leading scientists on that. It's a very important point. I don't think government is doing a bad job, they're doing a wonderful job, otherwise 3% would not be possible. Transparency is there, investors are there. It's not as idealistic as we would like, it's never it is in any country, but I think we're working on that. The government is listening, the Ministry of Energy is listening, the Ministry of Industry on Energy Efficiency is listening and helping as much as they can. But we have all to keep in mind that we cannot ignore 80% of coal generation, we cannot ignore oil and gas industry, uranium industry, there have to be a mix on that. And the best way forward is as simple as any person or any company, organization work plan, 5-10 year perspective. Electricity market development in Kazakhstan, which is existing in old forms but very outdated. As I was saying during my presentation, we're now targeting and thinking about new one for 10-year period, 2020-2030, where all sectors of energy will be described, how government and stakeholders would like to develop them, what will be their role, what incentives, what investors should do, and that will be clear, and I think will come down everything. But the integral part of that, from our perspective, speaking on renewable energy community, not the UNDP, is that local content has to be present there. Otherwise, we'll have shiny stations all around the world, solar, wind, any other, but there will be no Kazakh contact, no Kazakh labor force, no Kazakh sun panels, solar panels produced, and that's not the situation we're going to. Of course, it scares a bit investors and IFIs, but definitely there has to be a dialogue with them how this can be achieved. That would mean, of course, innovation and Kazakh science be an integral part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Arman, very much. And I have my final question, and I saw it was also popping up in our chat on renewables. So my final question on renewables and energy will be as follows. We saw from Arman's presentation that, and we know about it as well, that our electricity prices are amongst the lowest, and how in this current market situation, how renewables can compete with the conventional, with the electricity from conventional sources. What mechanisms or incentives should be in place? Is there need for subsidies, or how do you see the future development of renewables given the current market situation in our electricity market? Thank you.
Absolutely, that's a key question. We can say about the ecology and the blue sky that we need, but at the end it's all about prices. And I have to say, I didn't say it in my presentation, that the auctioning mechanism which was introduced by Ministry of Energy in Kazakhstan 2 years ago succeeded. The lowest price was fixed at 19 GE per kilowatt hour for solar, and the recent big project was won by subsidiary of ENI, Italian oil and gas major, for 12 tenge per kilowatt hour. We in Nur-Sultan pay as apartments, as households, 15, 16 tenge. So we can imagine it's already comparable. But at the same time, the issue, I think, another on stability of renewable energy, because you cannot supply the whole city of Nur-Sultan with renewable energy only. They have to go hand in hand with storage. Storage is expensive everywhere in the world, including Kazakhstan. So definitely there are a whole complex of issues, but as I said, the prices are going down, the capacities are going down. We don't want renewable energy tomorrow 100% in Kazakhstan. It's not possible. We're not living on the other planet. We still live in Kazakhstan. So, but gradually 3%, then 6%, 10%, it's very possible. Take into account that sooner or later 45% of coal stations inherited from Soviet Union have to be modernized or shut down. The issue of wider gasification or smaller scale nuclear power plants is still applicable. And that's the main reason, not because Russia has asked to build a huge nuclear power station in Kazakhstan or someone else in person or whatever, but because we need to secure future energy mix for growing Kazakhstan economy when it will be finally the member of 30 most developed nations in the world. And that has to be a mix. Of course, maybe not huge ones, but maybe smaller. For example, nuclear power stations developed by British Rolls-Royce, 300 to 400 megawatts. They plan to do so in UK by 9-year perspective. I managed Rolls-Royce in Kazakhstan, Central Asia. I trust these guys. Maybe that's an option. So definitely they have to be interesting, challenging time for energy in Kazakhstan, and we will all observe these changes. But at the same time, each one of us be doing research or working in international organization, national company, advising the government or each other, should definitely try to contribute so that at the end we receive best energy mix choice that's available for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from other panelists on that?
If I can, I will add only one thing. I just forgot to mention that our investigation with Nazim did not start from sustainable or from renewable energy. Actually, it was the beginning was from energy efficiency, and we were wondering about why in some towns people during the summer still don't have hot water, and why people in Nur-Sultan open their windows because it's too hot in their apartments. And we thought about this monopolistic approach to tariffs actually make people careless about energy, and they just, use this energy. They don't value the energy because it's cheap. And then we looked at this question of the energy deficit. And if, for example, we have never done any analysis, but on this town level, I did some master planning. And when we calculated if you increase energy efficiency, and if people use energy, and we will actually adjust buildings and infrastructure, and we decrease the losses, actually we can decrease energy deficit without increasing any production of the energy. And this is, I think, one of the missing part in our energy policy. The renewable energy detached from the overall energy policy, but it must be included. We have to think about energy from the saving perspective. We have to value and save energy. And it's all about the technology. So in the past, I remember to heat one house, you required a lot of coal. Right now, we see that technologies can allow you to decrease the volume of coal, or you can use the same amount of coal for heating a large building. And also with Nazim, we also looked at the investment projects where the big factory actually was run by 5 people. And it's used 10 times less energy than the factory from the Soviet Union. So that's why what we think about that we have to stop sectorial and narrow thinking about renewables, but look at the larger national energy system and national energy policy and invite all the stakeholders to save energy and to cover energy deficit by saving. And if we can reach a balance, then we have to think about what kind of new production powers we need. And sorry, I have to leave now because I have another meeting. Thank you so much. It was incredible, experience for me. I'm happy to meet all of you. I already have a copy paste of your emails. I will contact you separately on different issues. Good luck. And sorry, I have to leave.
Thank you very much, Madina. Thank you. And you and Nazim raised a very interesting question, which I was asking myself. So why we have open windows in winter in our flats? That was just the money streaming away through our open windows. For now, I think hopefully I covered all participants' questions related to renewables, energy security, and energy transition. And now my next question will be addressed to John. John, I would like to ask you a little bit more about the technology, carbon capture utilization technology, which you were talking about. How that technology, how much, for example, what is the price of CO2 captured using that technology?
Thank you very much, Alfiya. I think in every country you have a cost of production in the agricultural areas, and that is very much dependent on volume. That's the scale of hectares that's under management, and we've seen a move in the UK from having 20, 30 farm workers to having 1 or 2 now because of the relevant costs of high industrialization, high mechanization, larger farms. But in very big areas, I believe that, and I'm not going to give it individual costs on, if I could say, the equipment that's being used, but you will obviously use industrial sized equipment for industrial sized farms. So in Kazakhstan, in Central Europe, and particularly in parts of Russia, and now in the UK, you have very large areas under arable cultivation. So if you can take away and amend the equipment that you have, you do not have to do, for example, deep tillage. You can, the equipment is so versatile and so effective for assessment of acreage as well as for tilling it, for example, that it is no more expensive, certainly, and it's far cheaper, in fact, for new methods of agricultural ploughing and sequestration to occur, as opposed to the old farming techniques. Because the other thing is that over a period of time, the cell degradation is moved into remediation, which means you need less chemicals and you won't be using the chemicals as well. So on the balance, there is going to be a far cheaper cost to agricultural change with the additional carbon credits that are going to come out of that. So it is far more profitable in terms of both farming and the farming yield into the food supply systems. We've done quite a lot of work in looking at the equipment that we'd be using, the monitoring equipment. Technology has enabled us now, if you're looking at how you're going to assess this, you can assess the soil, the amount of carbon that's in that soil. You can plant by ways of drone now, for example. We're looking at various mangrove swamp areas where we'll be planting by drone as opposed to anything else. So there are now technologies which can make a very effective reduction in cost as against traditional agricultural practices. So on the balance of that, it is very cost effective to go into what I call the new carbon sequestration and the new areas of farming. And it will be the way that I think farms will go in the future.
Thank you, John. I hope your message will be heard by our agricultural industry, by business people and the government representatives. And my next question was for Kuat. I don't know if Kuat is here. Yes, Kuat, you were talking about energy efficiency, and then you were stating in your results that state understanding of importance energy efficiency got 1 point. So you were distributing different points to, like, methodology got 5 points out of 5, and then there was a point that
I remember it was a quote from Gulzhan. Yeah.
Implementation got 2 points out of 5. So my understanding that we have some methodology developed for energy efficiency, right? But then the implementation of that methodology actually basically, if not failed, but is not at the level as it should be. But on the other hand, if you have right methodology in place, which I understand should come from the state, but then you say that state understanding of the importance of energy efficiency is quite low. So how did you derive these figures and your assessment? And what do you think will be the most important factor in achieving energy efficiency?
Yeah, okay. Alfiya, that was the quote from Gulzhan Nalibayeva. At that time of moment, he was deputy chairman of the board, like Electric Power and Energy Saving Development Institute under the Ministry of Industry and Infrastructural Development. But as I know, for now, he works in another place. And Gulzhan, he is one of the main experts in energy efficiency in Kazakhstan. That was, from my point of view, that was a bit, how to say, I prepared this question in advance and asked it at the end. And like almost all of my interviews, they agreed that the methodology, the laws and strategies and programs in Kazakhstan, they really on a high level in comparison even with the leading countries in energy efficiency, because they try to transfer the best examples from Germany, from Japan, from even Russia, China, and at the same time they try to put it in local conditions every time, which is really nice. Yeah, and even though our professionals, they always participate, they're quite open to work with international organizations, with the other countries, and as they said, when they collaborate with the International Environmental Organization, they always respond that as the laws, as the programs, Kazakhstan is really nice, but when they come to the implementation, the huge gap, especially when it goes lower.
How can it be explained, this gap? What's the reasons behind this gap? What are
as they said, and also as I found, the programs changes very fast. The one thing, like if we see like in a more like higher scale, we are quite, for us, it's quite new area, because even that ecological modernization, and as John said before, like European countries, Western countries, they started to work in this direction in early 1980s. And when I did my research, I divided energy efficiency policy in Kazakhstan into two periods. First of them from 1990s and the early 2000s, because and there wasn't really like a direction to energy efficiency, because we had much more. We had the economic crisis. We didn't pay attention for that, to be honest. And yeah, thanks to our rich resources, fossil fuels, we got the money and started to pay attention for that. And after following international environmental obligations, treaties, and as like almost all the respondents said, the main driver of energy efficiency and renewable towards renewable energy, the driver is international environmental obligations. And as we know, the Western countries, they still they want to work in this direction. It means that Kazakhstan also will follow them. So like if in my opinion, and what the conclusion of my research is, like if we will see a bit more globally, so it's that the driver is climate change. Although it seems something far away, there is hardly anyone who doesn't notice it. There is even a theory that COVID-19 appeared for the same reason.
My understanding in energy efficiency was that it should be driven by the commercial reasons.
The cooperation between the state and non-state actors. It's true.
As Madina mentioned, because now the technology at the level when we need less coal to power the same amount of houses, for example, because the houses are getting more efficiently built and the technology of burning coal are getting more efficient. So yes, thank you for your answer, Kuat. And my final question will be addressed to our final panelist, Asil. I hope Asil is here with us. So Asil, thank you again for your presentation. And as we can see, it was lots of coverage in media that the local government of Almaty region, of Almaty city, like started by Gulzhan Nalibayeva, followed by, now we have a new mayor, Gulzhan Nalibayeva, who are they're both who are quietly actively involved in modifying, improving city. So you provided lots of recommendations how to fight this traffic digestion. What will be your main advice if you had a meeting tomorrow with Gulzhan Nalibayeva? What will be your main advice to the city mayor of Almaty, how to overcome these traffic jam challenges?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. I think that as I presented in my presentation in the research, first of all, there must be a switch in investment policy because, as it said before, nowadays we have more investments in expanding network capacity of our countries, of our cities, and mainly in Almaty, more new road infrastructure projects are being built, and there must be like a strong orientation towards not pure engineering, but towards sustainable solutions. And we need to apply these mixed land use approaches to basically basically to reduce these travel distances so that people will also have a strong alternative instead of using their private cars to use attractive public transport facilities. But of course, for now, within this very difficult period of COVID-19, due to ability of these viruses pathogens to fly, and buses and all other public transit services, they are can be considered as sources of virus, and this is really a difficult period for sustainable urban planners, and still any certain decision, certain assessment cannot be done. However, as I said, I'm giving recommendation in the long term, so we need to follow that third concept of our classification system, because Almaty is also have a transit traffic, which is also very crucial for our economical prosperity. So, as I said, these projects, big Almaty road is important, but it must be accompanied with this travel duty. So there must be not just external work, but also good, detailed internal work inside the city in terms of urban mobility. So.
Thank you very much, Asiel. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all our panelists, all our speakers today for very bright discussions, for your inputs, for your expertise, for your time, for being with us. And most of all, I would like to thank our participants who connected with us today, who spent their time. I hope it worth it. So thank you very much. And in order to conclude, I would like to give a final round of words to our panelists to conclude their message for today. And thank you very much.
Shall I start? Just
yes.
as a bit? Okay. Well, again, thank you very much indeed for having me on the forum. It's fascinating global questions that are being asked, as well as those very national to Kazakhstan. And I hope some of the comments that I've made and others made will make a difference and come back to me and to the team, I'm sure. So in conclusion, I think we've come to a tipping point in the fight to control carbon emissions and to be compliant on SDGs. The combination of innovation and innovative technologies, new business models for agriculture as a sector, and a repurposing of the business model with incentivization and reward will make a substantial difference to how we can rebuild an industry sector that has been lackluster in both attracting investment and I think in delivering return on investment. Agricultural practices that change deliver a multitude of SDG compliance in all of the areas. So across from the communities, the landowners themselves, whether they're small or large, from the food, the healthcare, and the follow-on activities from this that can come will start to change large sections of a country. And I think that's what we have to work towards in the sustainable approach to all of the industry sectors over the next 10, 20, 30 years. This one that we're looking at and working in at the moment is not just short term, it is longer term, because it will reap benefits for the natural resources. And I think finally, we want to be a pathfinder in the way in which we can translate these benefits for both new agriculture and for the follow-on generations. And we have an obligation to do so. And we're certainly committed to trying to make that work. We'd love to make it work within Kazakhstan, as well as in all the other countries in Europe and the world. But so thank you very much indeed for listening to the message. And I hope we'll see many of you when we're putting up the websites and the key developments and deliverables that we're making over the coming years. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Gulzhan, would you like to be next?
Yes, thank you. Well, from my opinion, the direction of development where renewable energy sources are used with traditional conventional energy sources is more suitable direction for our country, for the future fuel and energy complex of our country. And we understand the power system of Kazakhstan has a very high deterioration of equipment, and for now we need a huge modernized equipment, and also we need huge investments. And in this case, well-balanced tariff rules of the government in this sector should provide a gradual step-by-step increase of the tariffs, which therefore we can attract more investment, but at the same time we can prevent price spikes, price volatility in the regions. So this is more, in my opinion, this is more suitable direction of the development of our energy system. Thank you. And yes, I would like to say again, thank you to our organizers of this forum, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Can I step in? Because I have another call. Conferences are very good and useful, but we have our work as well. Excuse me. So definitely renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable energy is very important, and we have no other way but to go forward. But I would like to highlight, since this is conference organized by our student organization, PhD Masters in UK, that it's very much dependent on how you study, guys, in UK or other universities or Kazakhstan universities, because you are young, you are energetic, you have good knowledge. So as soon as you come back to Kazakhstan, you have to contribute to what was already done and what can be done further. As a Polish graduate, I know what I'm talking about. We are 15,000 already. We need to unite our efforts and to show best practices, how it's done elsewhere in the world and it's possible in Kazakhstan. Absolutely correct. All these areas are important. There is, as I said, no other way but to think about them, how we develop it further. And these conferences, I think, should be helpful in developing joint recommendations, ideas, exchange of views, so that there are even better ideas on a market today that can be discussed with the government and finally realized. Thank you very much for the invitation, and hopefully we'll see each other again.
Thank you, Arman. Thank you. And Asil?
Yeah.
Your final words to sum up this session?
I'd like again to express my sincerest gratitude to Kazakhstan PhD Association in the United Kingdom, particularly to Alya Simbayeva, Khalida Zhigulova, Alfiya. It was a very brilliant session today, and I think it's very useful for all of us. And I'm very proud that we as young researchers, on the highest level, we're putting our efforts in developing our country. And I hope that there will be next sessions then, and this forum will be an annual tradition for all of us. So good luck, and thank you very much to all.
Thank you very much, Asil. And the next word is yours, Kuat.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you again for the invitation to speak at this forum. It's my second time. Yeah, I just want to mention that energy efficiency is still a key strategy for solving problems like climate change, energy security, and economic development. The main message of my research that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Western countries went through our stage in the 1980s, 90s, and as the as the best examples from Germany, Netherlands, the UK shows that the state has to be open to other actors, and in collaboration between the state and the society, we can achieve certain levels. But unfortunately for now, the state mainly plays the role of a regulator, and as a political instrument uses command and control. The suggestion is to use other instruments as well. As a conclusion, yeah, thank you, researchers. You are the future of the country, not only the country, but the world. I hope Kazakhstan will develop in the direction of strong, open, and effective in the near future. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you again. Thank you everyone for taking part in this initiative. Thank you, our participants, for staying with us till last minute, and we highly appreciate your time and your interest. I believe we have a great sustainable future with people like you who have a courage, curiosity, interest in making this world a better place. Thank you very much, and we are finishing for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.